Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
And you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got him at 2.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back in Operation Domination. Don't hope to win, be great, and dominate. Make sure you download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. I told you we weren't taking breaks. NFL might take a break this week, but we're not taking a break on Operation Domination. That's for sure. And this is basically going to be a 100% dynasty temperature check type of episode because we're getting into the Senior Bowl rosters and some prospect profiles. I mean, we're just jumping the gun and trying to get into draft content as soon as we possibly can because we just had the Shrine Bowl. We're having the Senior Bowl coming up. The Combine is about a month away now from this point. It's all coming full circle as we get our profiles together heading into the NFL draft. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, joined here with the full crew. Adam LaRue and Chase Thornton. Adam's going to be helping us out quite a bit. Now, we did go through half of this list. I just want to say that your last episode. So another reason why you need to download the Operation Domination and go check us out on YouTube. So if we pick up about halfway through, that's why you missed part 1 last week. Go check it out there. But Adam, I'm not going to hit the segment check because this whole episode your segment. So let's go with it.
Yeah, we're going to start off with one that I think was big news as Senior Bowl practices kicked off at the beginning of this week. It's a name that, we were talking before the show. I didn't necessarily have on our list to talk about last week, and I wasn't necessarily planning on talking about, but the way the reactions came in about this player and his start to Senior Bowl practice week, I think it made sense to reel him and bring him into the conversation just so we can kind of have some context and have a conversation about him. That is Heisman runner-up, unfortunately for him. It sure seemed like Diego Pavia, who, look, I think Diego Pavia, I want to get the positives out of the way early because there are some. Awesome college quarterback. Awesome story. I think for the collegiate football has been awesome. Outside of his whole thing of maybe not being the best loser of all time at the Heisman ceremony, I think he's been really good for the sport. That notwithstanding. Started, in the dregs of college football, transferred into New Mexico State. He competed against what would become his buddy and tight end Eli Stowers for the starting quarterback job at New Mexico State. Stowers lost said job, became a tight end, and they both played for 2 seasons together at New Mexico State. Their offensive coordinator moved over to Vanderbilt, and they both followed said offensive coordinator and each other to Vanderbilt, and have been pretty rock solid their 4 seasons together. Of course, focusing on Diego Pavia here last season, 29 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, like we just mentioned, was, in the Heisman running. I think we all kind of knew that it was going to be Mendoza's, but, had a resume for it nonetheless. Pretty successful collegiate football quarterback, but based on his size and based on his limitations, I was not expecting him to be someone that we were seriously considering for dynasty rosters. I thought he'd make the NFL, practice squad guy, and maybe even, we'll see some highlights in preseason and the whole thing, but not someone who I was expecting to have much of a dynasty level conversation where he's going to get drafted in dynasty drafts or be rostered on dynasty rosters. But I think there's a lot of people coming off of his great season and, being a Heisman candidate that had that perception of him. And I think for a lot of those folks, that may have been shattered at Senior Bowl practices when he measured in at a whopping 5'9" and 7/8, so just under 5'10", and 198 pounds, so just under 200 pounds. He is a small guy. Vanderbilt had him listed at 6 foot, 210, 207 to be exact. And that's small enough for a collegiate quarterback as it is. But did not weigh in quite where he wanted to be, or measure up quite where he wanted to be at the Senior Bowl. So Dan, I'm curious what your thoughts are with Pavia. Is he someone like, am I wrong? Is he someone that maybe the arm and the mentality can bring him to where they want to be? Because I mean, they did beat Alabama last season, so he's clearly done some things against NFL caliber players, but I just don't see it personally.
You're talking to the guy who hates Bryce Young. I mean, I'm not going to Diego Pavia bandwagon here all of a sudden. This to me is a bunch of theoretical conversations happening all at the same time. First of all, no one who's an objective NFL mind thought Diego Pavia was an NFL quarterback. There are guys who are just college quarterbacks, and that's okay. Pavia is 100% one of those type of players. He's too. I mean, I never bought the idea that he was 6 foot even when he was on Vanderbilt, and I never saw an NFL arm to begin with when he was playing there either. The rushing's there, sure, but he's skinny, as laid out by his measurements. 197 again, was never buying the idea that he was 207 to begin with. So one, it's okay to be a decent college quarterback and not an NFL quarterback, and people need to get over that and recognize that when they're actually watching the college game. It's something that's always annoying me, especially at the quarterback position. Two, the other issue you're running into here is that there's nothing in this quarterback class. Once we get past Fernando Mendoza, oh boy, it's like skeletons. And because three, the other aspect that's going on right now is NFI, because of what that's doing to the sport, because players are trying to actually keep eligibility as long as they possibly can if they're not going to be a top 10 draft pick to make it worth their while to come out of college, you're kind of left with this. This is what it's created, even especially at the quarterback position. So when you melt all this together, Diego Pavia is a melting pot of what current events are going from college football to the NFL right now. Nothing to do with him as an actual NFL prospect. He makes a roster, great. If he gets drafted, I'd be shocked. Absolutely shocked. And I would blow back on the team who wasted a draft pick on him either. How long did it take Doug Flutie to be a starting quarterback? Was he like 38? And he's probably the most comparable size-wise.
Doug Flutie was at least listed at 5'10". This guy, Pavia, is so small, they can't even budget to 5'10" for NFL purposes. Flutie himself was listed at 5'10", and it was small. Pavia, I agree with you completely, Dan. He's a college quarterback, and he's a very, very good college quarterback. Accounted for something like 70% of their offensive yards at Vanderbilt this year, and no one else was even above 50%, like in the country. Like, very good at what they asked him to do and in his spot, and deserved all of the accolades and everything he got collegiately. But my guy is just so small. And I mean, I don't love Bryce Young. I just urge people not to forget about him for fantasy purposes. I like Bryce Young a lot better fantasy-wise based on what he can do and the way that they use him. I like him better there than I do in regular real-ass football. I don't want Bryce Young on my team. This guy isn't even Bryce Young. So, yeah, everybody needs to just slow their roll with Diego. Good story, great story. As a fellow little guy myself, I feel like I should be out here stumping for you, dude, but I just can't. You're 5'9" and 7/8, and you weigh 198 pounds. That ain't going to cut it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. All right, so we can get back into our list from last week. I just thought that with the conversation around him, it made sense to bring him up. So we left off last week, and again, like Dan led off with, go back and watch last week's episode if you missed it, because it's a lot of the same stuff we're talking about today. Last week we finished off with the Penn State running back duo, and now we're gonna get back into it with another running back, and that is Washington's Jonah Coleman. So Jonah Coleman is a guy who, again, what we're looking to do here is just kind of look at what they can do to kind of improve their stock. And I want to throw this asterisk out here too. Running back is like the most difficult position to improve your stock at these exhibition games, whether it's Shrine or Senior Bowl. Just in the sense that, I mean, in practices, like the pass blocking drills are kind of set up for the edge rushers. to win. You don't really in practice go to the ground that often. So you can't really show off breaking tackles. If you're a quick guy, sure, that's different, but you can show that, but you can't really show breaking tackles. So you get, max 10 carries in the game because they've got to split it amongst all these running backs. So we're going to talk about them because they're interesting, but nonetheless, I just want to throw it out there that it's difficult to gain too much stock as a running back when you're at these exhibition games. Pass rushers can, offensive linemen can, quarterbacks, like receivers, the whole thing. It's really tough for running backs. But nonetheless, Jonah Coleman, he was really productive in college, especially the last 3 seasons. 2023 at Arizona as a true sophomore, he had just under 7 yards per carry and just under 900 yards. And then the last 2 seasons at Washington, not necessarily the most efficient back, but someone who, definitely by college standards, a workhorse, especially by Washington's standards. Been a pretty good running back for them. 1,000 yards in 2024, was 750, a little bit over this past season, but 15 touchdowns. Got in the end zone, which we've talked about. I think that gets underrated as actually being a skill. It's not just generated by the offense. So for Jonah Coleman, what we really need to see out of him, or at least again, in my opinion, when we get to the game, can you finish runs versus NFL quality defenders? Can you show some acceleration? I don't think that any of us are necessarily picturing him as a guy who's going to have like great long speed, but can you show burst to get through the line of scrimmage quickly? Like just get out of the backfield fast. What we're, like I said, with pass pro, it's kind of difficult to show great, but if you could hold up at least in pass pro, that's the other thing. Like those are the 3 for him, because he's someone who I think the vision is solid. It's not great, but it's solid. And especially in this running back class, much like quarterback, it falls off pretty quick after Jeremiah Love. There's a lot of things going for him in terms of what's around him. But man, is he the athlete for this level? Dan, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, and we talk about the quarterback class being barren. The running back class isn't far off once you get outside of like the Notre Dame running backs. And then there's going to be some interesting names. And I haven't fully done my rankings. So I want to make that perfectly clear here. But there's an outside chance that Jonah Coleman could be my running back 3, probably my top 5 in this class, most likely. And when I look at his profile, is he any different than Woody Marks, which is a starting running back right now in the NFL? Their profiles are very, very similar in the sense of, I do think Jonah Coleman showed you that he could definitely be a pass-catching running back in the NFL. And while you get limited as a running back in the Senior Bowl, we can watch you run routes and he's done that well against linebackers and such within the practice and the one-on-one reps. He's a little bit bulkier, or I should say stockier, than Woody Marks is, and a little bit more low to center gravity, which may make him a better player as far as goal line carries are concerned if he gets those opportunities. But that's kind of what I'm looking at Jonah Coleman as. Like, you're a late day 2, maybe early day 3 type of draft pick, or hopefully you wind up in a situation that will allow you to be the passing down guy, like a Kamani Vidal to an Amarian Hampton. Something along those types of lines is what I could see for Jonah Coleman, with maybe a little bit more upside potentially. But it's kind of what's sad about the running back position. I'm like, yeah, you're going to be my top 5. I'm not that excited about you, other than he does have a fantasy skill set in the sense of the receiving yardage.
That's the thing when I look at him. He's nothing special as an athlete. Like, he doesn't have that great top end speed. He's not, the biggest, strongest guy out. He's nothing special that way. But he is a dual threat in that he can run. He is a good runner. He's got good vision. He's tough. He's a tough runner, and he can catch the ball. But the problem for us trying to forecast him fantasy wise is a couple of things. One, we have no idea where he's going to go in the draft yet, but I think he needs to go someplace where he can take advantage of like a zone blocking scheme, because I think that's where he is going to be able to do his best work. But the other problem is like we kind of alluded to already, the question with getting him on the field to catch passes is the idea that you have to be able to pass block. You have to be able to show pass pro. We're not going to learn a ton about that in the limited reps he's going to be able to get here in exhibition season here. He is a top 5, I think top 4 type running back in the class. But yeah, he is going to be one of those classic guys where he's got a NFL skill set, and he's got a skill set that in the right spot, a la Woody Marks, he can be fantasy relevant. But are you going to be able to get yourself on the field no matter what team you go to? And a big part of that is going to be that pass blocking. And he's also not a great route runner. So there's some development that has to happen before he can actually be able to showcase the ability to catch passes.
And I want to be clear here. Woody Marks wasn't a great route runner either, but he was somebody who come out of the backfield fluidly, and that's what you get out of Jonah Coleman. You get a fluid motion coming out of the backfield in order to do that. 1.73 yards per route run. That was very, very good. But kind of changed the back of your point here. 11 carries over 15 plus yards. That's about average. He was about average in missed tackles forced. I will say the caveat I'll give him is that some of his tougher competition he faced on the year was where he had some of his better games, and that is definitely a tip in your hat when it comes to my profile scouting.
Yeah, well, like I said, he's tough, and if he's a gamer, heck, we've seen stranger, weirder things happen. We've seen lower profile running backs or athletes come into the NFL and then all of a sudden blow up from a fantasy standpoint. But I think he is benefiting in terms of his ranking in this class. I think he's benefiting from, like you said, the overall weakness of the position in this class.
Yeah, definitely agreed. A lot of these guys, I think, candidly, regardless of position, are benefiting from the weakness of this draft class. If you're not, it's a tough one. I guess we'll get into it more.
For fantasy relevant guys, for fantasy, the fantasy positions, it's not
even outside of that. If you're not looking for an edge rusher or a safety, it's rough. Or interior line, I think is pretty solid. But
and Adam, this is what I was going to say. So how long has it been since we had a good draft with a bunch of edge rushers and interior linemen? And we haven't had that. So in a way, this NFL draft is going to balance out what we've had the past few years. But from a fantasy football standpoint, I mean, let's look at it glass half full. The glass half full version would be, if you think you're excellent at spotting sleepers, this is the class for you, because that's what it's all going to come down to.
Yeah, you need to do your homework on this class. There's not the stars.
But if you're in a decent position right now where you don't feel like you need a ton, are you more apt to want to get more shares of next year's class?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have assets that you are looking to move off of, if I can buy my way into next year's class, that's the move. I'm gonna, like I said, unless I have a pick where I'm getting Jeremiah Love or one of my, there is a core top 5 receivers whenever we get to them later on in the offseason, and I am big on. And that I think there will be 5 receivers taken in the first round of this draft class. I'm not going to sleep on that part of it, but outside of like those types of picks, I'm trying to buy into the 2027 draft as much as possible.
Ooh, that sets up a real interesting kind of climate there, where everybody is trying to bail out of this year. So somebody in your league is going to end up with extra picks, many extra picks in this year. And if they, like you just said, if they can hit on those gems, they might end up getting a real nice shot in the arm. But that's going to be a heck of a Nostradamus job.
When everyone else zigs, you zag. That's what it boils down to. Who's our next guy, Adam?
Yeah, so next guy is Taylen Green, who, I mean, we've talked about guys who could benefit from being a weak class. I don't think there's anyone who has the most to gain than Taylen Green, just in that physically he has everything, and the NFL loves that kind of guy. Candidly,
he's a human-sized quarterback.
This is the archetype of guy that rises at these exhibitions, because people will fall in love with the athleticism and fall in love with the physicality. So Taylen Green, by the way, is 6'6", 215, and someone who we can realistically expect to run like a 4.5. Good start on that front.
Get some, Taylen.
I'm going to throw this out right away. Remember how excited people got of Tyler Shuck because of the weak quarterback class and he could actually run and he was actually physically the size you're looking for? And now people are talking about like, well, maybe the Saints found their franchise quarterback. Taylen Green's going to test the same exact way, guys. Taylen Green's going to jump off the board the same way. It would not surprise me if Taylen Green was the number 2 quarterback taken in this draft class with what might happen in the combine. Wouldn't shock me.
He could have a very, like, it could fall apart. It could be bad. He could go throw 2 picks in the game, right? And you're like, all right, he just doesn't have it. But he has a real opportunity to climb the ladder in this class.
He could be an underwear Olympic darling this season. Yep. Yeah.
100% could do a lot for himself outside of the season. So Taylen Green.
Just don't watch the tape.
Yeah. The last 2 seasons he spent at Arkansas, it's been not great. His first season at Arkansas was 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Last season, 19 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Had 2 not great seasons at Boise State before that. Actually, he spent 3 seasons there, but one of them was as a redshirt freshman. So that's the one I'm not really counting. His career completion percentage in college, which is the big one, just over 60%. It is literally 60.1%.
It makes you feel better. His adjusted completion percentage is 71%, which is just slightly below average.
All right. Well, we're okay now.
Yes. But as a runner, consistent with what we've talked about, over his collegiate career, he has 2,400 rushing yards, 35 rushing touchdowns at about 5 yards per carry. So, I mean, the last 2 seasons, again, in the SEC, he's someone who, by the way, I haven't watched today's practice yet. The allegedly good things came out of today's practice. I saw, I think it was Lance Zierlein say something about Taylen Green having good practice today. So he's someone who so far so good in terms of what we're talking about goes. But I mean, Dan, you kind of alluded to it a little bit already, but a lot to gain for Taylen Green.
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head as far as where we're going to be enthralled with Taylen Green. And when I mentioned don't watch the tape, the reasons for that are this guy had a 29.5 pressure grade on PFF. That's bottom of the barrel, in case you were wondering. I mean, that's how bad this dude was under pressure. His big time throw rate was only 3.2%. Awful. For being a big guy, wasn't particularly great on deep throws, 122nd in that ranking there too. And then turnover worthy rate play, not very good at fitting into tight holes. 5.3% turnover worthy rate. That's one of the bottom tiers that you're going to get. So there's a lot of things about playing the quarterback position that are going to be a problem for Taylen Green. Or should I say, at the very least, he has a long learning curve. I mean, I would like to go to the guy and say, like, look, if you could put on 30 pounds, we can make you into the next Taysom Hill. I think that's possible. But outside of that, like, I joke kind of in jest that he could be the number 2 quarterback just because that's how wide open it is. It should be Ty Simpson. But I mean, like, at this point, like I said, I just wouldn't be surprised if we saw some major movement here. He's a major project. Make no mistake about it. But from a fantasy standpoint, let's say you're in, I don't know, round 4 of your rookie drafts or round 3 of your rookie drafts, and Taylen Green went as a day 2 pick in the NFL. I'd probably take a shot on it if I'm looking at a quarterback because of what he can give you as a rusher, because of how his size is, and just because of lack of options.
We talk a lot that a lot of our dynasty teams are super flex anyway. And in super flex, quarterbacks are gold, even if they're a second string quarterback, because a second string quarterback is one snap away from being a starting quarterback, which is gold. Mm-hmm. The thing about Taylen Green here, I mean, he's got a big learning curve. Like you said, he's still actually learning how to go through progressions, it seems like, but he does have some things that bode well, at least in terms of his game and how it could translate to the next level. When he's a mobile guy and when he's on the move, he does keep his eyes downfield. He is looking to pass. He's not just a like yank it down and run type of guy, which is nice. The problem with it is that I've seen him comp to Jalen Milroe. I've seen him comp to Anthony Richardson. I'm not the biggest Anthony Richardson guy. I don't think any of us are anymore. Anybody should be.
No, but he went in the first round.
He did go in the first round, but the problem with Anthony Richardson, like I've always said, Anthony Richardson can throw a ball from here to Arizona, Taylen Green gives me the same kind of vibe in the idea that he's much more a thrower at this point and not as much of a passer. There is a big difference between being a thrower and a passer. The same way that I've always said in baseball, there is a difference between a thrower and a pitcher. Just because you can throw the ball right through the catcher's glove and the backstop doesn't mean you can throw it for a strike. And we've laid it all out here in terms of his ability to fit it in the window. He has a nice deep ball, but the placement isn't always that accurate. It's a real problem there, but you can't teach 6'6", you can't teach 4'5", and because of that, somebody should take a flyer on him in the pros. Maybe Detroit hooks him back up with his buddy Isaac Tesla from that he knows from his college career. Who knows? But the idea of like you said, Dan, being in the 4th round. I've said this kind of thing before. Okay, are you going to take a shot at a guy who might be your 10th or 11th wide receiver, if that? Or are you going to take a shot on a guy who might become Tyler Shuck? And if he becomes Tyler Shuck, he's a usable piece, if only to move him for something else, for another asset. But if he's there in the 4th round, he, like you said, Dan, he goes on day 2, even if it's late day 2, he's a day 2 pick. I would take a shot on that all day long with my 4th round pick in Dynasty because, hey, Tyler Shuck happens.
Yeah, 100%. There will be, I think there's going to be people that fall in love with Taylen Green over the next couple of months. Maybe it won't be enough to actually move him up boards. Maybe it will be, but I do think there's going to be some people like really talking about him.
Have you guys seen the picture of Aaron Judge and Jose Altuve standing next to each other during the game? And I mean, like, the difference is, it's ridiculous. It's like Oompa Loompa and a giant. I want to see the combine photos of Taylen Green in line next to Pavia. I want to see that. Those guys are competing for the exact same position, guys.
Yeah, this is true. Speaking of guys who are very different from Taylen Green, got a couple quarterbacks. The first one, Senior Bowl, and the second one will bring us into some Shrine Bowl guys that we get to talk about. So that first one is Illinois quarterback Luke Altmyer, who started his career at Ole Miss, made it over to Illinois. He's weight-wise not much different from Pavia, but difference being he's over the 6 foot mark, which kind of helps.
5 inches or so.
And he's someone who, again, a lot of these are going to ring true for both of the next quarterbacks. Like, it's uncanny. Someone who I think a lot of people were excited for coming into this season. Didn't necessarily have a big season last year, but 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Illinois was feisty for sure. And, had some good throws on tape. You think, all right, maybe he takes a step and you've got something here. He did not take the step. He put up an almost identical stat line. Completion percentage, to get the positive out there, completion percentage went way up. It went from 60.8, so just under 61, to 67.4. Other than that, he went from 22-6 to 22-5. And I think the single number that's going to tell the biggest story of what he needs to do at the Senior Bowl to really boost his stock. His big time throw rate was 3.1. It was even, removing guys who didn't throw the ball enough. Luke Altmyer was 122nd. Again, that's, ignoring guys with like less than 100 pass attempts. The 122nd. It's rough. He just, not someone who was throwing the ball down the field, not successful throwing into tight coverage, or at least not attempting to do so and not doing it with any amount of volume. And someone who to be looked at as anything more than a guy who is smart and could be a backup and, is fine, like a guy who could hang around the league. To be anything more than that, he's got to do a lot of work here at the Senior Bowl. And candidly show off an arm when we get into the underwear Olympics, as Chase put it earlier. Because right now he's someone who, looks fine, but not really someone you get excited about.
He's your run-of-the-mill third-string quarterback who has no arm.
Yep.
And that's basically what it boils down to. And the difference with him is like it's not even like he makes quick reads either. I mean, the guy had 21.5%, pressure to sack ratio. It's brutal, absolutely brutal. You look at his statistics and how it breaks down and everything like that. Like he lived off of screens. He was 36 in screen yards in Illinois, and we make fun of him, not throwing the ball down the field. Last year was his best yards per
yes
8.2. Before that was 7.8 and 6.9. You're just talking about a guy who just doesn't have a lot of upside. He does a little bit of everything. He does a little bit of the running. He can get the ball out. He can kind of run the offense a little bit here and there, but he doesn't have a skill set that really pops out to you in any kind of way. And again, doesn't have draft capital hype coming into this. I'd be shocked if he was more in a day 3 pick, a late day 3 pick at that. I think we're looking at another 6th, 7th rounder here potentially, probably just based on his, career playing experience. The only reason why he might even get drafted in this scenario. It's just a guy who doesn't really move the needle for me in any kind of capacity. Like, for instance, I would definitely take a shot on a Taylen Green, even if he flames out, than a Luke Altmyer who's going to stay on the 3rd quarterback string on some team for the next 5 years.
Sean Clifford, anybody? That's Luke Altmyer. And hey, Sean Clifford is employed. He's much closer to being an NFL quarterback or player than any of the 3 of us on this panel currently, as far as I know. And Luke Altmyer, he's accurate, and he's increased his accuracy every season, which is awesome for him. And his interception percentage has dropped every single season. He takes care of the football. He does what's asked of him in the offense. But I mean, Brett Bielema has never necessarily been a quarterback whisperer. His offenses and his coaching staffs, that's just not what he does, and it's not what they do at Illinois. I've seen Luke Altmyer comped to Michael Pratt, Jake Haener, another couple of guys who are, destined to never be anything more than a 3rd string. Altmyer, I mean, we would have to see something crazy happen over this exhibition season and at the combine, and then see him land in the absolute perfect position to even be on the fantasy radar. So I'm not worried about Luke Altmyer, but I mean, good for you, dude. Like I said, you're closer to being an NFL athlete than my ass. So.
Yeah, this is fair. This one, I think, same vein. And this is also our transition to the Shrine Bowl, which has happened. This guy did not play in the game. And that, for some of you, that might be a hint as to who it is. This guy, a little more interesting, but it's a lot of the same stuff we're going to talk about. This guy being Cade Klubnik, who ceilings exists. It's not high, but it exists. Former 5-star quarterback. I don't think he has a good arm. We're not talking about Taylen Green here, but it's more so than Luke Altmyer, for sure. And I would say more so than Diego Pavia as well. He's not an exceptionally aggressive quarterback, and that, same assortment that I mentioned of Altmyer being 122nd, Cade Klubnik's 3.8 big time throw percentage is 92nd. So not high. What you're hoping for with Cade is that this past season, Clemson sucked. Like, Clemson was a mess. And that whole organization has not looked great recently. But last year, when they were good, Klubnik was awesome. Like, he had 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions instead of the 16 touchdowns and 6 interceptions last year. He was, someone who came into the season being a guy who, in a lot of mocks, was in the 1st, 2nd round, was someone that people were really excited about, and someone that people thought, didn't have a great arm, but had enough arm and could be like that field general type of quarterback. And he's kind of lost that shine. He's lost, that designation that I think a lot of people had given him. So he did practice. He didn't just go to Shrine for interviews, which happens a lot. that people would just show up, do the interviews, do the weigh-in, the whole thing, and then get out. He did interviews and stuff, and he did interview with teams, and allegedly that went well. But he did practice as well, so we have practice film of him. And from what I can tell, that went pretty well also. So
he actually got a lot of positive press for how he conducted himself at the Shrine Bowl, despite, like you said, not being in the game. He actually was one of the people that got some love for the way that he acquitted himself. So, I mean, there's that for him.
Yeah, he's not a guy that's coming up when you look up like the winners of the Shrine Bowl per se, but in terms of guys who actually have NFL futures, he is one of the winners of the Shrine Bowl for sure. I think that he helped the stock a decent bit. But Dan, I'm curious your thoughts, because again, he's a bit of a game manager. I think he's got that, he is that Clemson quarterback where he kind of went as Clemson went. But at the same time, I think he's got a little bit more juice in him than the guy we just talked about in Altmyer.
Yeah, sure. Instead of a third string quarterback, he could be a second string quarterback. Look, this was kind of a sore spot because Cade Klubnik, he was somebody that, and this is going to make me sound like a jerk, but I was kind of happy that this year happened the way that it did, because when he was getting hyped up after 2024, like he was going to be this bona fide first round pick of a quarterback, I was rolling my eyes, because just look, get past the statistics sometimes. Sometimes you just got to watch what you're seeing on the film. And what I saw was a very, very mediocre, below average type of NFL quarterback skill set. Now, I think he's good enough, again, to be a backup quarterback. But this isn't a guy who's going to push the ball down the field. I mean, even in his great year, you're talking about 7.4 yards per attempt. Another quarterback who lived on screens. What I will give him is he's good at taking care of the football. Only 2.2%, turnover worthy rate, which is excellent. Only 11.6 pressure to sack ratio. Excellent. And his 2.71, average time to throw. That's right on the money there as far as what you're looking for as a quarterback. So the ball's out. He's not turned the ball over. It makes him a safe NFL play. But even if he winds up being a second string quarterback in the NFL, or should I say, even if he wound up being a starting quarterback in the NFL, he projects to be more valuable as a NFL player than he does as a fantasy football player. One, this isn't going to be a year in, year out type of starter. And then two, you're not going to get the rushing, nor are you going to get the plays, nor are you going to get the touchdowns that you need to actually be fantasy relevant from that quarterback position either. So ultimately, do I think he goes early day 3? Probably goes or somewhere around there. I still don't think this is a day 2 draft pick that we're talking about ultimately, especially after the year he just had in Clemson, how horrible that was. But again, there's not a skill set that stands out that you're looking for fantasy football upside. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's not the athlete that's going to be able to take over a game. He's not the kind of quarterback that's going to elevate those around him and make the players around him better. I'm going to admit right off the bat that one of the first things I saw, in my research on him was a Quinn Ewers comp. And we all know my thoughts on Quinn Ewers, FQE. But I will at least put this out there. Quinn Ewers has already had 5 times the NFL career that I ever thought he would have. So there is that. But
sure.
Yeah, Cade Klubnik, good for you for acquitting yourself well this past weekend. Continue to work hard. Yeah, he'll find himself on somebody's roster and should, but he shouldn't find himself on anybody's fantasy rosters, barring the weird, he gets a Clayton Tune start like Clayton Tune did. So no, he's not a fantasy guy, but he'll be on somebody's NFL roster and probably should be.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Altmyer, both in terms of what he can be and also where he goes in the NFL in terms of being rostered.
And he's not large.
Fantasy perspective.
He's not large, but he's human sized.
He's bigger than, once again, he's not better. He's not great. He's not massive, but he is bigger than Altmyer.
And this is the little guy of the show saying that and pointing that out and coming back to that repeatedly.
That's a great segue.
Tell you what you should think about Pavia.
You want to talk about little guy of the show. Damon Claiborne, our next guy. That is the little guy of the show.
That's my boy.
Can you believe they listed him at 5'10" during the season?
Yeah,
that's my boy.
That's not true. Can you
I was
believe they listed him
5'7" in
at almost
college,
200
too.
pounds? Because that's also not true.
I was 5'7", 160, and I left both of those in the dust a long time ago in different directions.
Yeah. Damon Claiborne, I want to give him his flowers early because a lot of this isn't necessarily going to be great. The most fun film that you're going to watch this cycle, sincerely, will be the most fun that you're going to have.
Pew, 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 pew.
Does he have an NFL skill set? Probably not. The comparison, and I'm blanking on the name, but the Kansas State running back Deuce Vaughn from a couple of seasons ago. It's a situation very similar to that, where awesome for college, but I just think the size is going to be too much of a limiter to be much of anything at the pro level. Yeah, that's genuinely it. Like, if you can show in the game that you can do pass pro, that you can fight through tackles, then we've got something here. But I'm going to need to see it to believe it for you, because the size is just such a freaking limiter.
Yeah, and at least Vaughn had legitimate NFL explosion to him too. I mean, Claiborne's quick, but he's not really NFL quick. Like, his elusive rating is not very good. I mean, his yards after contact is brutal at 3.04. It's well below average. But then on top of it, you look at his carries over 15 plus yards. He only had 12 of those. And then you're like, okay, well, if you're going to be that little, can you at least produce in the passing game? I mean, he got targeted. He had 38 targets. 0.66 yards per route run.
Yep.
Nothing with those targets. So, yeah, this is the type of guy who maybe he makes a case for himself for special teams to try to get on an NFL field, but I'm not seeing a lot of it. Even in Deuce Vaughn's case, who I thought was a much better player than Claiborne is coming out of college. Even he had to flail out eventually anyway. So I think it's going to be a much shorter leash there for Claiborne. But, fun nonetheless. Hope he enjoys the process.
Yeah. Claiborne, by the way, I just want to throw out there, got hurt in the practice lead up for the Shrine. So that's also not helpful at that size to break any like size related thoughts teams might have.
As the resident little guy, I hate to harp on it. I hate to harp on a guy for being little, but like the thing, I mean, he's got decent lateral agility. He can make moves. He's got good contact balance, but the problem is when you're that size and you weigh that much less than pretty much everybody who's trying to tackle you, contact balance doesn't mean a lot in the face of the hard, cold facts of the physics equation in terms of mass and velocity meeting each other. So he's not going to be able to show enough as a pass blocker to like change people's minds that way in the coming up here in this. It is what it is for Damon Claiborne, but yeah, I mean, could he be a special team guy? Sure. Maybe. He's a little bit shifty, but he's 22 years old. He's not the fastest guy in the field. So if you're going to be small, you have to be at least fast. There's none of that there. He's probably a guy who has an NFL career to speak of when it's all said and done, but nothing that we ever cared about for fantasy. So.
Yeah, that's probably accurate. Like I said, I want to give him the shout because he is actually really fun to watch. I'm glad he's a part of the process, but yeah,
I love watching little dudes. I just, I got to be realistic about how high they can reach. Pun intended.
Yeah, that was a good pun. Jack Endries is our next guy, another Shrine Bowl guy, and ironically enough, to go from from running back to tight end, decent similarity here, and that I think they're guys fighting gadget labels. To be honest with you, obviously being like the return, like do trick play type of thing with Claiborne, if that. And then with Endries, I think we're talking about a guy who, are you something other than like a receiving down tight end and H-back? Can you be an actual inline tight end? Because right now I think you're a guy who, has been productive in the past receiver. Not that great this past season at Texas, but at Cal, the season prior, having 620 yards is pretty solid for sure. and being a guy who has some athleticism, has some pretty solid hands, but kind of raw as a route runner. Even then, like when we talk about a guy who's receiving, like he's athletic enough, has the physique of a guy who could be a receiving tight end and has succeeded at the college level being a receiving tight end, but not necessarily the route runner that you want right now as a receiving guy, and someone who certainly I don't think any of us would trust inline blocking, but has some upside. And the tight end is another one of these positions where after our top guy, there's just not much. Curious what you guys have with Endries. He's another one who I think is fun. I don't know the T is long for the NFL, but tight end's the one where you have most positions in the NFL these days. You have very little time to develop and you get thrown away if you don't. Tight ends can sit and tight ends can develop years down the line. That one you can. It's like that and tackle. Anything else, you're out the door fast. If you're a tackle or a tight end, year 3, if you're just coming on, cool. That's the one thing of solace for him.
The thing that worries me about Endries, he projects as like an inline type tight end, but he's not a great run blocker. And if you're going to be an inline type tight end and you're not going to be a great run blocker, I'm worried about how much time you're going to find yourself actually on the field, as opposed to, oh yeah, it's an obvious passing down. This guy's an obvious pass catcher. Let's put him on the field. Well, now everybody knows what's going on. He's not the fastest guy either. And if he's going to be just that kind of like, I don't know, Jordan Reed type H-back move tight end, he's a good route runner, but I worry a little bit about how much he might find himself on the field in terms of overall playing time to get himself the looks that we need in fantasy to make him relevant. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, that's where I'll push back on, because I feel like, not that he is this player, but I feel like I'm reliving Fannin all over again when I kept being told Fannin wasn't a blocker, and yet he was one of the highest graded blockers coming out of college. And that's what Jack Endries is. I mean, he's got a 66.6 run blocking grade. That's well above average for tight end. And I'd rarely ever see him get beat too badly when he was asked to block. The issue that he has is the lack of production that he had when he came over to Texas and there was no Mason Taylor. So it's kind of like, okay, were you just that good at receiving, or were able to put up a decent receiving profile when you're playing against lesser competition? And the second you play with the big boys, you disappeared. Because I'm here to tell you, while your best attributes, graded out wise, productivity wise from a season ago with Texas there, was actually as a blocker, you are not big enough to necessarily be an every down inline blocker. That's the other issue that Jack Endries kind of runs into here. Some athleticism, like Adam has said there, but doesn't have very good hips. I don't really like that either for him, as far as somebody who I'm looking for that might have potential to down the line, lower type of pick tight ends of what I'm looking for. He reminds me a lot of, and he's not as big as this player, so I don't even know if he's going to be on the field, but he reminds me a lot of Tommy Tremble, in the sense of like, there's some athleticism you can block, but there's not really there's really no movements to your hips. You're not really going to be sustaining as a starting tight end week in and week out. And
Tommy Tremble finds himself on the field enough to be a viable NFL player, but he finds himself on the field enough to be an annoying fantasy like thorn in everybody's side. So that's a great.
Yes, I mean, Javian Sanders is going to be fine, I think, eventually. There was never any case in my mind that I thought Javian Sanders would go off year 1. We'll see what happens after that. But kind of the point of like he kind of gets caught in this no man's land as a result of his size, a little bit of speed, not enough speed, not necessarily big enough to just be a blocking tight end. And the only two offenses that I know of who could take a tight end profile like this and actually turn it fantasy relevant are the Bills and the Rams, and they're fully stocked on tight ends. So it's kind of the issue that Jack Endries kind of finds himself in right now.
Yeah. I think that, exactly to your point, like he's someone who there's something there if you can figure it out, if you can coach around it, but I don't know that many places will consider doing that. All right, so one more tight end and then one receiver, and we're out of here. Eli Raridon, I get to throw in one of my guys, Notre Dame guys. He's fun. He has a basketball background, which gets fun. Always love that for your collegiate your collegiate tight ends. Due to an injury, I think it was a sophomore season. Was it a sophomore season that he tore?
Yeah.
So did not really do anything until this past season, but he's got NFL size at the tight end position, and he had been someone the past 2 years, that sophomore season where he just played a couple of games, and then last season, where despite not really getting on the field much, he was someone that they would bring in to use in the red zone. Ironically, did not get in the red zone this season, but it really felt like a surprise. He's someone who has the build to do it, and they had, like I said, in previous season when he wasn't seeing the field, they had brought him on for that, and had a couple touchdowns that way in his collegiate career. But someone who does not necessarily have a wealth of experience. He only has 32 receptions, a little under 500 yards, but 15 yards per reception this past season. Has some explosives. It has the body of an NFL tight end functionally, and had the recruiting grade of an NFL tight end. And the little bit that you see looks good, but it's just such a small sample with Eli Raridon. And you can tell too that he is raw. You see some awesome plays, but you also see a guy who, doesn't sit in space, who doesn't necessarily have a full route tree, who doesn't do the little things very well. So I'm curious what you guys have to think outside of my bias, of course.
No, actually, I'm gonna back up your bias here, Adam. I am. I think Eli Raridon is going to be somebody that we are talking about quite consistently, especially if he performs well at the combine. Compared to last tight end, I have way more hope and upside for Eli here. So not only does he have the body size that you would like to have, that you can develop a little bit as a blocker, and actually had an average blocking grade, so the effort's at least there. But you're talking about the guy who is number one in deep catches, number one in deep yards, and near the top with 2.21 yards per route run. To your point, it was a small sample size. He only had 44 targets. But, man, when he caught the ball,
he made the most of it.
Was he a mismatch down the seam for anybody who tried to guard him? So if he comes out and he has a great combine, well, then teams are going to look at that between that and the production. They're going to say, hey, we have a guy who maybe needs some development, but actually has some upside here. And a tight end position, to the point you made before, earlier about tight ends being a position you can sit and then maybe they pop in 3 or 4 years. He fits that mold to a T. And I'm always going to be tantalized by a tight end who used to play basketball. I'm always going to be tantalized by that guy. I don't think him not getting a touchdown last year speaks of the type of player that he could be inside the red zone. So I am very interested to watch Eli Raridon go through this process coming up. And I think everybody should have their eyes on him for sure.
No, the basketball background, like you said, Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, they kind of set the tone, and then now everybody is looking for that kind of thing. But yeah, hey, you can't teach 6'7", and I know he's maybe a little light for 6'7", but you can't teach that. He is physical. He does a good job of finding the open zone, which is important for the tight end position because that's what you're going to be asked to do a lot. Plus, I think he's a 3-down type tight end, which is nice because he won't have to find himself off the field or on the field based on the situation there. Does he need a little bit of development? Yeah. But could he turn into something really fun given the right landing spot? Heck yeah. So I'm not gonna press the homer button on this one quite yet for you, Adam, because I think this is a guy that we should be looking at. He should be on our radar. Late in your drafts, yes, but a guy that should be on our radar because there is enough there that Eli Raridon could make some waves here on your Dynasty roster.
All right. Well, we have one final player, Shrine Guy, and someone who I think is interesting. An interesting discussion at the very, very least. And technically, a guy you can claim, Chase. That's Skyler Bell.
Because he had a cup of coffee one time with a cousin who went to Wisconsin.
No, he had 750 yards at Wisconsin over his first few seasons of college football.
Yeah, actual stats as a Badger.
He played for the Badgers a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, not nearly as much as he did at UConn this past season, where he was functionally their offense with the 101 receptions in 13 games. And
that's crazy.
13 or 1,278 yards, just under 1,300 yards. So just under 100 yards a game, like 8 receptions a game, and 13 touchdowns in 13 games for the 6 foot 190 receiver. So definitely a guy we're looking at as a slot guy, but someone who, all right, you were awesome at UConn, clearly. And by the way, it has a bit of an interesting kind of jump around in the sense of last season at UConn.
Jump around Wisconsin.
Nice. Last season at UConn, when he wasn't the main guy, he had 17 yards per reception. So this is a guy who has succeeded as a guy who is going down the field. And then this season became like target monster, the 10 yards per reception slot guy who's just getting all the volume in the world. But he's done both. The question becomes, when you're not playing against UConn's competition and instead you're playing against NFL guys, does that continue? Of course, it did have the Shrine this past week, got to prove that out a little bit, but curious your guys' thoughts on Skyler Bell kind of as we enter this time of year, because he's one of the most productive FBS receivers this past season.
Well, I thought it was key that you mentioned the fact that the year before, when he wasn't the whole offense, he was still 17 and a half yards per reception as an efficiency to kind of show you that the efficiency, the separation is there legitimately for Skyler Bell. And look, UConn, it's not North Dakota State. Okay, you're still talking about Division I football. So for him to be the offense the way that he was and be highly productive, that's always going to turn my head, at least to some degree. There's a redshirt senior. He's a little bit older. He shows it with his route running. It is there. The separation, I think, will be legitimate in the NFL. Now, I don't necessarily think he's Julian Edelman at the next level, but I do think we're talking about a guy who could possibly go in the second round, and it'd be completely warranted. The things that I love that I look for wide receivers, especially ones that we're trying to, not obvious first rounders. Are you good against man? Yes, he was one of the top graded wide receivers against man. If you got a ton of volume, which he did at 141 targets, were you still efficient? Yes, he was. He had 3.13 yards per route run. Absolutely ridiculous amongst the top. So I have the efficiency. I have the separation against man coverage. I have all the production that we talked about to go with it. This is a legitimate second round wide receiver to me, and somebody we're definitely going to have our eyes on heading into fantasy football purposes.
Yeah. Well, when we talk fantasy guys, I think he was the single most interesting guy that attended Shrine. Without a doubt. By the way, just Chase, before we get you in here, something that I find really interesting. So official measurements at the Shrine Bowl, 5'11", 187. That's about probably expected.
Man, he'd be a big quarterback.
12, yeah, no kidding. So around 20th percentile for both of those things. He had 10-inch hands. That's awesome. I mean, the thing that probably matters the most for someone like him, that's 87th percentile amongst receivers. So height, nothing. Wingspan, nothing. Weight, nothing. But the hands are massive.
But he could palm a Volkswagen, so that's good. Exactly. He's got anime proportions. Good for you, buddy. No, and the cool thing about, we all know that Wisconsin has kind of floundered since the Luke Fickell hire in terms of figuring out what they actually want to do on offense. But look at his redshirt freshman year at Wisconsin, where he had 30 receptions and 5 of them went for touchdowns. And oh, by the way, they gave him 13 rush attempts that season, and he averaged over 12 yards a carry on 13 rush attempts. This is a guy that they, if he finds the right system in the NFL, he can have plays schemed for him, and he can be successful and effective doing those kinds of things. So yeah, this last season at Connecticut was his, breakout, like coming out, hey world, I'm here kind of party. But there were signs beforehand, like we said, the year before, in terms of the yards per reception and still being effective, even when he wasn't the number one read. 2 years before that at Wisconsin, like I said, where they were trying to manufacture touches for that kid, because I think they saw and they knew what they had in him as an athlete. There's juice here. There's juice here, and he is definitely somebody to keep on your radar as we enter draft season. And when we find out where he goes, the right landing spot for this dude could be a real fun, like sleeper situation going on where he's not going to get the hype that some other prospects get. But if he lands in the right position, if he lands in the right city, he could have some fun juice here in fantasy coming up.
Yeah, 100% agreed. We saved a good one to cap it off with. I think that's for sure. Someone interesting.
It's always good to end with a Badger, an ex-Badger.
Yeah, we got the end with both of our colleges back to back. Then
hey!
There we go.
Palmers.
Unfortunately, no Rutgers guys here.
No. The Rutgers guys, they were not involved in the Shriners Senior Bowl.
Shockingly, no Rutgers guys.
Huh? How'd that happen?
There will be one. There will be one.
We will have one.
There will be one.
We just claim one at a time, and that one at a time always makes the fantasy football impact. Guy Pacheco, thank you very much. Kenny Britt back in the day. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Guys, come back next week because we're talking about DFS Super Bowl. We'll have some more Dynasty offseason stuff for you guys to get into a little bit. I'm sure we'll maybe recap the Senior Bowl. We'll talk about that later. And then, of course, make sure you're downloading us all throughout the offseason at Operation Domination and on our YouTube channel at the Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net, because it's going to be nonstop action here. Don't worry, I will have Chaz Flaherty from Sports Betting Weekly back with me next week for an episode 2 to get our best bets for the Super Bowl, along with my last player prop dropping for the huddle. That article will be out next week too. So a lot of action coming, Super Bowl coming up, but we are all season long. And until then, you guys have a good one.